put some slots, and IBON with Paul and other sponsors got this slot, and we had with Anil, PSI and others a slot on Friday at 1:15. So Friday we were meeting again at 1:15, and maybe more specifically on rights, but the floor will be open, and even the speakers are open, and it's good to have an informal spirit also. Thank you.
Good. Isis, Anita, Darcy, any of the other sponsors want to say something? Co-sponsors want to say something before? Stand up if you do, please.
Thank you. I mean, concur with everything that has been said by Clay and yourself, and it's great to have Melinda here. The experience of working with the Human Rights Council on climate change issues was great, so it was good that that was followed up on the Rio 20 process as well. Just to highlight one concern, which is an emphasis by some northern states on population growth. And the reason that women's groups are concerned about this is because it's being used as a rationale for environmental degradation, as well as why one needs to invest in reproductive and sexual rights. So this false rationale, which was refuted in the Cairo and the Beijing conference and the Rio conference, is sort of creeping back into the agenda. And so sexual and reproductive health and rights are somehow couched, inside this paradigm. So one thing is to challenge the population growth link to environmental degradation. And the other thing is to support sexual and reproductive health and rights as a standalone goal, and that should be invested in, not goal, a standalone right that should be invested in. The other flip side of that is that some northern states are inserting sexual and reproductive health and rights in various places in the text, and we think that they're going to use this as a bargaining chip to gain what they would like on some of the green economy issues. So they're sort of using women's rights as the classic divide on women's rights around sexuality and health as a bargaining chip. So what we're trying to do is to get northern states to pull out a lot of these references in the preambular sections and just keep it in the health section and in the gender equality section as a right in and of itself, not couched as under the population growth arguments and not in the preambular sections, and to reaffirm the Cairo and Beijing platforms for action as a standalone. That's just one issue around women's rights. There's also other issues around women's land rights, protection of indigenous and women's knowledge, and so on, which is also under threat in other sections of the document. But this is one that is becoming contentious, and we worry that it's going to become the typical football that's played between the North and South, and that we're just arguing that it cannot be, it's not up for trade, basically.
Good, thanks. Any other co-sponsors, if you want to, just stand up? Okay, so we're going to open it up. What I'm suggesting is that we can stay with our concerns a little bit, but we also need to, if this is, this is a negotiation, and part of our responsibility is to put where we want to go, put ideas forward. And there are some, of course, that are already in play. The social protection floor, maybe people can talk about that. There's the treaties, the people's treaties. There's a few other, and I'm sorry I don't have them all, but I want them to come forward. I want people to talk about how we can use some of these innovative ideas and things that are safeguards and that get us back to pushing the agenda forward. Because if we're only playing a defensive game of protecting what we wanted 20 years ago or in the past, then I think it is a very, what are we creating here in Rio, right? What are we trying to do? Are we looking into the future? So what we're trying to do here is set for the next generation the way forward. And to do that, we have to be very bold. And the moment is now. We only have a few more weeks left. But this is, I think, our role. So I'm opening it up. If you have concerns, certainly bring them forward. But if you also want to take it into that sphere of talking about how we move forward with a truly progressive and the vision, the future we want, I invite that as well. So we have 1, 2.
One of the things that, yeah, okay, thanks. One of the things that seems to me vital is to get the word out to all the different rear groups. There's a handful of people. I'm not really a videographer, but I knew when Yo Kling was going to talk that what she said was going to be worth hearing by people outside this room. And I think that's one of the things. There was I mean, back in the days of Rio, there was the Ian Onset General, and everybody was subscribed to it. Now there's probably 40 or 50 different email lists. So we need to get it out to all of them, and we need to get it out on Facebook, on Twitter, on Google Plus, or whatever, because I think this issue has to be heard outside of these walls.
I'll talk a little bit about the social protection. Well, first of all, coming from the trade unions, again, we deal with a crucial aspect to every family, to every community, and that is decent jobs, decent employment. We from the trade union movement, again, we represent the workers who are in employment, whether formal or informal, whether legal or illegal. There's a range of issues. We agree with a lot of what we've heard here today. We should not accept any stepping back. We've got to be very clear on that, and I think we are. But even that, just accepting what is there is not enough. So social protection, or the social protection floor, is a new initiative. And that recognizes that families and communities need to be able to count on a range of services that allow them to have a life in dignity. I could go through a whole range of them, but for us the most clear is water, sanitation, food, nutrition, health, education. So the social protection floor initiatives, I think, go across every community and every group in this room and should have support. The other thing that you'll hear from us is a concept called decent work. And that means that you should be able to enter into employment relations with freedom, with equity, with justice, without harassment. And guess what? There are very few of us who actually get to do that on a daily basis. So we're coming forward with two new areas that we want to hear support. And what we see is that governments are not hearing from us enough. And I agree with your point is, how do we take what's going on in these hallways and make it real for my members who don't have time to study all these fancy texts and words? How do we make it real so that they can get in the streets? Because I'm sorry, we need to get in the streets because our governments aren't listening.
Well, Melinda and, sure, okay. And,
thank you very much. Judith Arenas from the International Development Law Organization. I just wanted to make sure that people were aware of what I believe is a useful resource, and going back to the point that you were making earlier about communications. We actually hosted a workshop and a roundtable last Friday here in advance of this week's discussions, precisely around the issue of how law can be a useful tool to promote sustainable development, and how there have been many advances in terms of international law measures, both in terms of international tribunals that have taken landmark decisions in terms of protecting water, protecting natural resources, and ensuring an equitable access to them, but also in terms of some very specific projects at the national level where countries like Mexico, Vietnam, Costa Rica, and others have actually taken a very progressive approach towards making sure that there are steps taken to ensure legal preparedness for climate change. If you look at the Twitter feed, which is @IDLO News, you can find information about the different discussions. The different presentations will actually be made available, and if there is a listserv, during the course of this week, we're actually in the process of looking at and trying to follow the great example set by OHCHR in terms of coming up with, from a legal point of view and from a sustainable development point of view, what are the key considerations that must be taken into account during this process, and we'd be happy to share that.
fantastic, thank you.
Thank you, Judith. I just wanted to mention two things, and one prompted by Anita's statement in relation to sexual and reproductive rights. One of the documents we've prepared, and if I have access to your email list afterwards, I'd be more than happy to disseminate it to you, is we've actually prepared a compilation of agreed human rights language, 13 key topics and looking at selected documents that have actually been agreed to by member states at world conferences, etc. And so, for example, the right to health and including sexual and reproductive rights was actually in the MDG review outcome document in 2011, when we need to remind states not to go back on hard-fought and already won language. I also wanted to mention as well that we have I'm terrified by tweeting. I haven't actually ever tweeted before in my life, but I think I'm going to have to once we get to Rio. And we actually have a social media coordinator within our communications department who's totally devoted to, I'm going to butcher this title, but it's something like #Rio, Rights at Rio, something like this. It's on our website, Rights at Rio, thanks Judith. And so it'll be really great if we can somehow, collaborate on that. It's not something that OHCHR does, but it's something that you can do to mobilise your governments to act on certain issues. And I just wanted to shamelessly give a plug as well that we are also holding an event next Friday to also discuss the importance of a rights-based approach to human rights and sustainability. Yes.
Thank you. We'll certainly circulate documents, Marco.